Welcome, Mr. Suni. It is a distinct pleasure to have you interacting with our members, esteemed members, and some of the members of the AEEE team. Before I start, sir, I just want to make a quick introduction with your bio for the benefit of all the audience that is present here. So just give me 1 or 2 minutes before I interact with you. Um, so, Mr. Suni is presently advisor to POSOCO, and he is the former and chief executive officer and founder of the Power System Operation Corporation Limited. Mr. Suni has over 4 decades of experience in power system operations of various regional grids in India and has worked extensively towards integration of grids, leading to the formation of the national grid and now the SARC grid. He specializes in power system operation, planning, commercial, settlement, restoration, and the entire gamut of power pooling and governance. Other areas of interest include electricity markets, open access, regulatory affairs, besides expertise in load dispatch technology, integration of renewable energy, including REC mechanism, transmission pricing, and development of ancillary services. Mr. Suni is a life fellow of Institution of Engineers India, fellow of IEEE, distinguished alumnus of IIT Kharagpur, distinguished member SIGRE, fellow INAE, foreign member National Academy of Engineering USA, and he has represented India on the SIGRE Study Committee C2 on Power System Operation and the SIGRE Study Committee CS on Electricity Markets and Regulation. Welcome, sir, for agreeing to join us and share your thoughts. Um, all of us understand and realize the importance of power grids and the critical role that you have played over several decades. So, sir, just to start with, I have a kind of a couple of icebreaker questions. So, you have spent a lifetime working on developing the unified power grid and reforming the power sector in India. And maybe I think I won't be too much off base to say that in some ways you are the torch bearer to drive innovation in system operation and planning. And in the last 5 years, of course, your role has changed as an advisor from the CEO of POSOCO. So that is, I think, we would just like to hear from you that I think how your day-to-day kind of responsibility has changed. We know that you are very actively involved in this. And maybe as you are speaking on this, you may also want to share that how the idea of this unified grid, which is such a big achievement for India in terms of one nation, one grid, how did this idea for unified power grid came about? And how long this has taken for this dream to become a reality for you and for the National Power Grid Corporation as well as the POSOCO. So, sir, please, if you can share your thoughts on a couple of these questions.
Thank you very much. First of all, it's my pleasure to be amongst all those who love energy efficiency. I read the 25 pager slide deck and realized how big is your canvas. And I must candidly admit that there is so much to learn. I have been working as a system operator for 40 years from a high level, but we understand that unless from the bottom side things come up, then it will be very difficult to operate the whole system. And I am a learner. I am a system operator, as you mentioned. So I am here to learn uh, about this journey of mine. That's not very important. But what is important is that there were philosophers who thought particularly, suddenly when you ask the big minister Fuller, comes to my mind, philosopher engineer who thought of interconnecting the whole world to provide cheapest energy to the every person, and he said that there is no dearth of energy, the dearth of ideas, which is important, and that literature really influenced me. And a bit on my side, the moment I graduated, I joined engineering services by design, not by accident, and I am continuing like that. And in 1980, we had a workshop in Goa, where at that time, there were 30, 40 grids in the country. So I made a two-page paper note and wanted to present in the conference that why can't we have all India grid? Because Europe is going in that direction. US has been able to integrate so many grids. Why can't we also have it? And as expected, it was too ahead of time, and I was ridiculed that do you have any idea how much money is required and how much time is required? Well, that's a fact also. But then, since then, 1964 resolution of government of demarcating country into 5 regions, then step by step transmission being recognized as a separate activity in 2003 Act, Power Grid Corporation formation, and then we have never looked back. And one by one, integrating regional grid itself was a big challenge. At that time, the technology was not that good, be it communication, others. But gradually, by 90s, we had integrated the regions. And then came the power grid and large investment in transmission. And by 2013, we have all India grid. It's all very fast forward that I have mentioned, but you can well imagine how difficult it was to construct and bring all the states into one grid. Sardar Patel, we all remember for, consolidating, connecting, this is one way of integrating India. And we take pride in it. Now, that's one hardware side of it. But what was more difficult was of bringing in political consensus, governance, accounting, settlement, rules, procedures. Those are much more difficult things. Those are a matter of culture, but over the time that has been brought in. And then a 2012 disturbance that really gave a jolt, and people realized that it can't work like this. And then government said that let there be a special institution which has to look after this, who will have no conflict of interest but will be a knowledge industry. And that's how the POSOCO formation gradually took place, and now today we have this. So number of things have happened since then. One is market has come. In pre-90s there was no market, but now you can buy and sell from anywhere to anywhere in the country in 15 minutes, 1 megawatt. That's first thing. The second thing, which is very fast changing the whole thing, is the renewables, the decarbonization. So these two changes are forcing us to change the systems and processes in the grid. So far, I would say that we have come up very well. We have gone to the cross-border side, Bangladesh, Nepal, Bhutan, and to some extent Myanmar are also part of us. And now the India is talking about one sun, one world, one grid, and you all know about International Solar Alliance. So things are changing very fast, and very recently, FARC chairman, US, he said that transmission has to be thought in a different direction, not in a piecemeal basis. But India, fortunately, did this thing right. And of course, we had flags from many that we have spent too much on the grid. But today, we take pride in the grid. I think I would stop here, but it's a fascinating journey. And I tell you, if you are a patriot, and there cannot be better thing than operating the grid. You ensure that everybody has a power supply. And during COVID, I realized it even more. That demand has gone down, everybody says, but very few people say that the value of electricity has gone up. See, we are all locked in our house, but imagine if the communication and electricity was not there. So let's take things forward. Yeah, let's hear others if they have any questions. Yeah, thank you.
Yes, sir, before I hand it over to the audience, I have like maybe two or three more questions just to set the context. So you did mention about this Black Summer of 2012, 30th and 31st July, which gave a big jolt to the Indian power grid operators. And if we look at from things like almost 10 years ago to where we are, where India is heating record peak of more than 200 gigawatts today. And not only that, the fact that we also had shown that how flexible I think the Indian grid has been, and where I think in this instance, like within a fraction of an hour between like 8:45 to 9:45, the electric demand came from like down from 117 gigawatt to 85 gigawatt, and then increased to again 100 gigawatt again. And this was done, I think, 9 minutes at 9 p.m. It was such a big deal, which was so we have seen the lows and we have seen the highs, I think, in a way. And once again, I think some of the people are not truly aware of, I think, what went behind the scenes. I mean, you did talk about some of the things, but how did I think what is really fascinating that from the depths of despair, I think within 10 years, how did this success story came about? And you have talked about, I think, the inertia, or I think which is inbuilt into the system when we were talking earlier. So if you can maybe spend maybe 2 3 minutes also again responding to, I think, this amazing transformation that Indian Power Grid has gone about, I think that would be very, very helpful.
Yes, so this 9 p.m. 9 minute, it's an experiment which I don't think world any of the grid ever had or ever would have. Uh, More than 30 gigawatts fluctuations for such a large grid. So a few things very quickly. First thing is that it was not an overnight that one could have achieved. All the preparation which had gone, making grid stronger, making generation flexible, having systems and processes in place, many SLDCs, the platforms for coordination, all such things came to our rescue on that day. And that you need a strong grid before you want to become smart grid was proved on that day. But some other things also. We realized that public do respond to clarion calls. It was by Honorable PM and people responded. In fact, they sometimes do it in an unpredictable fashion also. So our estimate was less, but actually it happened to be more. So it needs extreme preparation because you are handling extreme scenario. So the situational awareness is of very high degree is required. So how the mass will behave, that has to be seen. And then like any war, one has to be prepared for all kinds of eventuality. But I must say that thousands of operators throughout the country were glued on the one screen. We were all synchronized. We had practice whole night of every machine by machine as to whether it will be able to do it or not. We realized the value of ramping. We realized the value of hydro stations, how good they are. And we were even prepared that if it is more, then how we will get the demand response also. So all such things were lined up in a very meticulous fashion for the almost 60 hours which we got after the announcement and the final scene. So it proved that that we have a latent potential of demand response. We also it proved that we need flexibility of very high order, and it also proved that we will be able to integrate renewables if we keep our grid strong and all other systems and processes and regulations, everything. One lighter part, not side is all these things happen. Everybody knows. But what happens to the settlement? Somebody drew more, somebody drew less, somebody flexed his hydro, somebody ran his gas turbine. Everybody has to be paid. Everybody has to be paid to his satisfaction. And that's a very challenging task. It has to be dispute free settlement, because at the end of the day, who will pay to whom? Unless that is solved in a very systematic fashion, you can't have sustainable things. So yes, it proved a lot many things, and we also know that which are our weakness areas. We need to work on that, and there are people who are continuously working on it. So yes, all in all, a very good experience, and it was really a challenging one. And I think this will remain a topic for almost all the universities where power system is taught. That what could be the largest credible contingency one can get. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I think the point that you are emphasizing, that it's not just the technical strength or the robustness of the grid, but that technical development and innovation needs to be married with the commercial settlement process, which will really make the power grid very, very unique. So I think sometimes we forget that, and for especially for engineers and other people, this will be a very, very important thing to keep in mind. One last question before I kind of open it up for discussion. um, Sir, you know that AEEE and many of the people who are on the call today, we work on the demand side of things. And Indian Power Grid, as you yourself mentioned, I think there are a couple of developments. One is I think the role of the electricity markets, which is evolving very, very rapidly. And the second is the large infusion of the renewable energy that Indian grid is experiencing. So in that context, I think decarbonization of the power sector is firmly underway. And given the inherent variability with the renewable energy sources of solar and wind, what are the operators planning to maintain reliable power flow operation while keeping the network resilient and secure? And how important, I think, the forecasting of the demand in this scenario it is, and what kind of a role demand flexibility can play to smoothen, I think, the peaks and the valleys, I think, that we sometimes see when we are allowing a large renewable energy resources to come in. And related to this question, sir, is that we still realize that how critical coal is for the Indian power grid. It really dominates India's power generation, and it has it while it was meant to cover the base load of the country, as they were considered inflexible units, but tremendous, I think, advancement has happened, and and the way I think these coal power plants are operating, I think flexibility is the mantra that many of them are following. So, do you think that there is merit in considering demand flexibility as an alternative to derive flexibility from coal? And maybe I think from environmental considerations, maybe from economic considerations, and also I think what is the best thing that can happen to the country in terms of grid flexibility and resiliency, sir. So over to you.
Yeah. So I mean, this is an FAQ. This everybody has to answer. So climate change is a reality, and India is also committed to decarbonize its systems. And but we are coal predominant system. But India needs everything. We need flexibilization of hydro. We need pump storage. We need to flexibilize our thermal. We need to flexibilize our transmission. We need to have flexible market, and flexible regulations. So flexibilization is required in the entire value chain, and there is no silver bullet to this. Uh, we need policies which are now in place. We need plethora of regulations to put systems and procedures in place, and then physical systems. So now thermal below 55, now we are talking of 40%. It's happening. We have now real-time market. Every 15 minutes one can buy and sell. And the whole problem is flexibilization per se is required, is understood, but what is most important is that it has to be done economically. If we burn too much oil and make a thermal plant very flexible, it's of no use. So emission also has to be kept in mind, cost has to be kept in mind, and that's where the challenge is. That's where the optimal has to be found out. See, a few other things are happening very quickly, but this quick and slow is a matter of a time frame. uh, Load curves are changing slowly, but we are realizing that it is changing very fast. So the shape of the load is changing because we were in chronic shortage for decades, and in the last 5 years, now we have come out of the shortage, and now we are adequate. I would not call it surplus, but we are adequate. But the shape has changed. Load factor of the load has gone down, and there is a clear seasonality coming out. There is a clear diurnality coming out. You can have a look at a recent report which POSOCO has put on its website with a flasher on seasonal load factor of Indian perspective, state by state analysis. Now, so forecasting has become a very serious business. Hitherto, when you had a chronic shortage, you could forecast and you could always say that we didn't have enough generation. So your forecasts were never tested. But now that we are adequate, you have enough capacity of generation. So if your load forecast is wrong, it will clearly come out. So the forecasting has become a very serious business. We need data scientists and artificial intelligence, neural network, pattern recognition, name, all these things are required. And there are people who are doing it in different states and different regions and at the national level. So that's another part of it. Now, another thing is that now our load duration curve, all of us know about it, and it is becoming kinky. So the last 1% is very, very expensive. Should we keep on adding capacity to meet that load is the question. And you all are doing the work in the exactly the same direction. What is the value of lost load, and what would be the cost of meeting that last 0.1% of the load? So what is the best thing for the country? What is the best thing for the operator? So yesterday I was attending a release of report by NREL and BRPL and USAID on this demand response. And I found that the Delhiites, almost 90% are ready to allow their thermostat to be, changed, allow, they would change. So we are frugal. We are frugal people, and we are very price responsive people. So the demand response is, I think, the topic for the next decade very seriously taken by India, because we can't afford to keep on adding capacity for the last 1%. We need to shift, we need to shape ourselves and economically meet that last 1%. And we have huge potential. We know how to move our agriculture load. There are agriculture load from night, it has been brought to day hours in many states, and we can shift. We have to align ourselves with sun, early to bed, early to rise. That's how the load shape has to be changed, so that we utilize the solar to the maximum, and it is doable. It needs intervention from policymakers, from regulators, office timing, staggering, and there are various options which are there. Earlier, we were having load shedding, but that's now a taboo. You can't do load shedding anymore. You have to take the confidence, consumer into confidence. But I think a lot of work will happen in this area. Now, you may ask me that why was it not happening? Because see, when you had chronic shortage, our priorities were different. We were just, our optimization was maximization. But now it's a different thing. So I am sure that now there is no looking back. We will have demand response, energy efficiency, DSM, and variety of products will gradually come in. And I think we are on the right track. You all are working on so many areas. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. What I'll do is that, as we know, Indian power sector is in transition. You are just emphasizing that how the whole power generation, transmission, distribution has changed over the last, I would say, 5 to 10 years. And you said that we are adequate, at least. I think and the emphasis is going to shift to some of the demand side measures that will be required to satisfy the last 1%, because it's really, I think, in our lives, it's the last 1% that causes the maximum challenges. I think whether we are trying to complete a report or whether we are trying to complete a budget, or I think anything. So I think the point that you are making is a very, very important one. And it's also kind of a clarion call and a marching order that how the demand side industry needs to position itself to make itself a friend, and also do it in a very, very cost effective fashion is something that you are talking about. We already have National Smart City Mission, smart metering rollout, many of the appliance efficiency standard related procurement going on.